our News from the Hill segment tonight, a new bill aimed at preventing shootings like the one at a Parkland, Florida high school has hit a snag. Senator John Cornyn's Fix NCIS bill would amend the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, making it mandatory for all federal agencies to report criminal convictions to the Attorney General, so those convictions are put in the background check system. Senator Tim Scott says it's painful to watch Democrats hold up the bill, but at least one Republican also opposes this bill. He is here with us tonight. Joining us now, Republican Congressman from Ohio's 8th Congressional District, Representative Warren Davidson. Congressman, thanks for joining us, sir.
Thanks for having me on tonight.
All right, Congressman, talk to me about your opposition for this bill. Why do you oppose it?
Well, Cornyn's bill doesn't include some of the language that would be necessary to make sure there's due process. And so, frankly, I had a number of people react negatively when people heard the president reported to say, first take the guns, due process second. And that's kind of what happens in this bill. And we know that's what happens in the status quo because last March, the House passed a bipartisan bill, H.R. 1181, that tried to address that problem within the VA. So the VA reports the same way Cornyn's asking to right now under the current law. And sometimes veterans have their right to purchase firearms stripped. Now, sometimes that's right, but sometimes it's wrong. And the downside is the adjudication is only after the fact. And so we've had casework where we've helped veterans resolve this. And so I think the right way is to do it in a different fashion where you do the due process first, and then if necessary, then you take the firearms or have a temporary lack of access to the firearms. And so this bill doesn't do it that way. That's why I'm opposed to it.
Right, so just to clarify here, it's not the meat of this bill, the idea that federal agencies should be required to report criminal convictions to the FBI, to this background check system. It's not the meat of the bill that you oppose. It's just sort of the methodology or the wording, the language you said in the bill that orders the confiscation of firearms before due process of law?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the loose language is a flaw for most folks. But for gun control advocates, that's a feature. They look at it as, oh, good, now we can use this to exploit, gaps in it. And so under the previous administration, they were looking for every way possible. And we've had whistleblowers reach some of my colleagues and say, we were told that if a veteran simply says they don't manage their own personal finances, they do that. They don't ask follow-up questions. Maybe the spouse is a CPA and the other member of the household does the personal finances. But they were being entered into this database or being instructed within the VA to do that. At least 2 whistleblower cases like that I was made aware of from a colleague.
Right,
so,
and that's
again,
similar.
H.R. 1181 passed it last year.
Sure, and I think that's similar to what happened in Oregon. Liberals claim the NRA opposed a red flags law, basically a gun violence restraining order law in the state of Oregon, but truthfully, it was because the person accused had no recourse to represent themselves or defend those accusations in court. So it wasn't the meat of the bill, it was the order in which it would have been executed here. Let me ask you, for this particular bill, Cornyn's bill, would this be easily fixed just by rearranging the language a little bit, or does it require that the whole bill be scrapped?
Well, Rand Paul's got an alternative bill that's a different approach, but same outcome, or the same outcome that the people that support it say they're for. And this would say that the only way that you wind up in the database is through a state court, a federal court, or a military court. And you think about in the case of the Sugar Land, Texas shooting, you had an Air Force veteran who did go through a court process. And the problem is even after having been discharged from the military for that conduct, his criminal conviction under military court never made it into the NICS system. So he was able to buy a gun legally that he should have never been able to purchase.
Right, and that's where my support for the meat of Cornyn's bill comes from, because I do think that's necessary. If the Air Force had reported that conviction to the FBI, that attack never would have happened. Those people never would have died. That attack shouldn't have ever happened if government had done their job, which they didn't. So a fix is necessary. Congressman Davidson, let me pivot topics on you and ask you about the drama that's happening in Washington, D.C. yesterday and today. President Trump firing Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and appointing as incoming Secretary of State former CIA Director Mike Pompeo. What do you make of those changes?
Well, okay, so first of all, under current law, you would have to, the Air Force should still report it. And under Cornyn, though, you would still have the problem where, what if they don't report it? So you could still, it's still a human error possibility. And then specifically about the Secretary of State, Secretary Tillerson got us into a good position. I think the progress the president has made and the administration has made in the Middle East with respect to ISIS is unbelievable. People would not have believed that when he was campaigning, that he would have the kind of results that we have actually had as a country. And the same in North Korea. Frankly, the North Koreans are threatening us with nuclear weapons that they said they gave up when Bill Clinton negotiated a deal. And that deal in North Korea is stronger than the bad deal that President Obama negotiated with Iran. So I think diplomacy was made great progress with Secretary Tillerson. Having said that, I've got to know Mike Pompeo. He's a fellow West Point alum, graduated at the top of his class. I've never met a single person that had anything negative to say about him. I think he's going to be an exceptionally good Secretary of State.
Right, I certainly hope so. And liberals are coming down pretty hard on the woman who President Trump has nominated to replace Pompeo as spy chief, head of the CIA here, Gina Haspel. There's been talks that there's going to be a widespread effort coming from the left to try to derail her confirmation hearings. They are going to expend political capital to try to stop that from going through. Is that something Republicans in Congress, not just in the Senate, are willing to coalesce behind her to get her confirmed?
Well, I think a number of people are reading a lot about her. I mean, the nature of her role was fairly private. I mean, she's an insider. She's been part of the CIA for a long time. And so I first heard about her when she was proposed as a nominee, frankly.
Right. So I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. Congressman Davidson, thanks for coming on the show, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.